Dean's List, hosted by Dean Kitaboski, produced by Davis Piper. We're about to talk to some really interesting people. Get ready.
In fact, the numbers will back it up. That was the lowest, as far as ratings go, that was the lowest the NBA Finals had been. I mean, they were barely treading, like, they weren't even respectable numbers. They were way down. And again, that was probably because all sports were going on at the same time.
Right.
And obviously, I think, and NBA got a little too political, and that kind of rubbed some people the wrong way there. Rubbed some people the wrong way there. But now, so the ratings were really down that year. It was actually like jaw-dropping to see how bad the ratings were. But obviously now, now they're playing a normal schedule and everything. It's sort of back to like normal ratings.
I'm a big supporter of politics and sports. I don't know about you, and I'm sure you've got like a real opinion on it.
See, I think.
But I was just saying, real quick. I was just saying, like, I really do like the idea because it's a national stage. It doesn't. All sorts of people watch the NBA, so that's why I really support it, as opposed to, different situation. Like in actual politics, you lose a big chunk of just average people because they're just not that as interesting. But on the other hand, you get really big and well-known players talking about their opinions on different things. I think that's a really good thing. I'm sure you have an opinion that you want to flesh out right now.
Yeah, so I definitely think there's a place for political. Listen, I'm not going to knock any sort of players on their political beliefs. I think the problem that we run into as a society is if you don't believe the same thing I do politically, that automatically makes you a bad person. Mm. And it's far from that. We might have, completely different political views, but I'm not going to judge you as a person based on that. But I feel like where we are now sort of in society, if someone has like a political opinion or who you support, like I've run into people where who are, if they run into like a Trump supporter, they automatically say, oh, he's a bad person, or he or she's a bad person. I'm like, they might not agree on everything you say, but you can't judge a person based on their political beliefs because it is their beliefs, and you can have discussions with them. But
I hate when that happens. More broadly, I hate when people group individuals in because of one belief of theirs, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
People, because there are obviously Trump supporters, Clinton supporters, whoever you support, that believe in a lot of different things. Like there are Clinton supporters that believe in a small economy or a small government, and there are Trump supporters that believe that there should be a lot of government programs out there. So it really irks me when someone's oh, you're a Trump supporter? Okay, you must be a bad person. Or you're a Clinton supporter? Wow, liberal type thing. Because there's more to it than that. I don't know if you went over this. Maybe did you ever hear of Lear Nickham?
No, I did not. I have not.
I think he was the one that told me this. But George Washington never wanted a two-party system, specifically because of issues like this. Because then people would group themselves into different groups, and now you'd have a huge divide in the country, which is so obvious now. And it's a really negative thing.
Yeah, and it again, like going back to sports, like it kind of brings up the whole Kyrie Irving situation. People will judge him based on his decision to not get vaccinated. And listen, I don't agree with that decision, but again, at the end of the day, it is his choice. If you want to judge him based on his what I try to judge players strictly on their pure play. Again, I ain't got nothing wrong with. There's nothing wrong with players going out and expressing their opinion about political issues. Although Kyrie Irving is a strange fella, I think he still thinks. I don't know if he still thinks the Earth is flat.
I bet you he uses rune stones on the weekends.
But again, I don't have any problem with him expressing his desire not to, or same thing in tennis with Novak Djokovic. If he didn't want to get vaccinated, I mean that's fine. I mean he had to pay the price for it because he couldn't play the Australian Open. But
there's also a big cultural divide there with us and Djokovic. Because in parts of Europe, getting vaccinated just isn't a huge thing. Like they don't care about it or talk about it as much as we do. I mean, granted, Americans love to talk about any and everything, so that's probably the main reason. But in a lot of parts of the world, getting vaccinated isn't a huge divide like it is here. So, but I know exactly what you're saying, and I honestly think it's a good thing that they they held firm. They said you have to be vaccinated to play this. We're not
Yeah,
going to make an
because-
exception for a big star.
There you go. Exactly.
It would have been fun to watch him play, of course. I love watching tennis, especially the Australian and U.S. Open. Those are my two favorites. But at the same time, it's definitely a good thing they didn't, crack under the pressure. You got to hold firm on some things.
Yeah, again, when it was first announced that he had the exemption to go play. Now, the only part that I will favor him in is the tournament. So the tournament itself, like the town it's in, I think Victoria, they have like a separate government.
Okay.
So that government, I think, actually like granted him the exemption.
Right.
But then when he got to the border, they said no, like the exemption doesn't like. So
the Australian government.
Yeah,
said no.
exactly.
Yeah.
So like the two governments are like differing, and that's where I'm kind of like on his side. It's like, well, if you were never going to let me in the first place, why did you grant me the exemption in the first place? And then completely stop, because he was stuck at the border for a while, and it must have been like a huge like emotionally taxing process for him, because then the judge overturned his ruling, so then he could play.
Am I get to play? No, never mind.
And then he was granted in to play, and the next thing you know, a couple court cases later, he's not allowed to play, and then he appeals it, and then he loses the appeal, and then he goes back. But that was like. I'm glad it finished before the tournament started, because then that would have been a huge like conversation to go with. And again, a lot of players came out in support of him, which it's okay. But at the end of the day, that was the rule, and you can't make exceptions just for big stars, because then that's not. I don't know if you know this, but actually, a smaller player who's going to play had the exact same thing happen, but they didn't have the resources to try and go to court with it.
They probably didn't even have a conversation about it. Government was like, you can't come in. They're like, all right,
so obviously that player got sent back,
Right.
and they didn't have the resources that Novak has to try and fight the case.
Or the publicity.
So
it's mostly about publicity. Do you think the Australian government would have cared at all if it hadn't become a big deal online?
That's true.
And like, go home. Go home, man. This is what we're doing, And that totally goes back to in that case, he wasn't even speaking his mind. He was just, I'm not vaccinated. Can I play anyway type thing? But that turned into a huge thing. Like, Novak Djokovic isn't vaccinated. It's a big deal. It wasn't a big deal at the time.
If it's you're not vaccinated, that's okay.
I mean, it's fine. It's your choice. I mean, I say it's fine loosely. Because, of course, there are, like, health benefits to the people around them and everything like that. We're not going to get into that. But it goes back to the speak your mind, it's your choice.
Again.
But, generally speaking, I don't mind at all when athletes speak their minds.
The only time I start to mind it is, like, if that starts to dominate and sort of take away from the sort of the game
100%.
itself.
Yep.
Like, so, again, like, I'm full in support. I don't know, remember when Colin Kaepernick started kneeling for the national anthem? That was a huge deal, but I didn't really pay much attention to it, because I wasn't old enough, and now he's still trying to get another opportunity.
Right.
And some people think he's been blackballed from the